A 13-year-old boy slips through the gate of a motorcycle clubhouse at midnight, armed with nothing but dog food and a makeshift leash. The bikers catch him red-handed, but instead of throwing him out, they stop cold when he says, "He was my brother's dog, my only friend. What happens next will restore your faith in unexpected family." The chain-link gate groaned as Trey squeezed through the gap he'd forced open with a bent screwdriver. Close to midnight, the Iron Reaper's MC lot sat dark except for a single overhead light that buzzed and flickered over the main garage. His sneakers made no sound on the gravel. He'd practiced this approach 3 times over the past week, always chickening out at the last second. Not tonight. The bag of kibble rustled against his side, half open because he couldn't afford the kind with a zip seal. The leash was a joke, gray hoodie string he'd braided together during a sleepless night at the shelter. But it would hold. It had to. Jimmy was in the back kennel, the one near the oil drums. Trey had watched them move him there 2 days ago. The pit bull's massive gray head lifted the moment Trey's shadow crossed the fence line. A low rumble started in the dog's chest, then stopped. Jimmy's eyes locked on his. The dog knew him. "Hey boy," Trey whispered, fingers threading through the chain link. "Remember me?" The growl stopped. Jimmy's tail gave one hesitant thump. Trey's hands shook as he worked the kennel latch. "Almost there. Almost. The hell you think you're doing?" The voice hit like a punch. Trey spun, his back slamming against the kennel. 3 men emerged from the garage. No, 4. Big guys. Leather vests catching the light. Faces that gave nothing away. The closest one, a bull of a man with a gray beard, held a wrench like a weapon. His legs wanted to bolt. His hands stayed on the kennel. "I asked you a question, kid. I'm not stealing." The words came out steadier than Trey felt. "I'm getting him back." The bearded man laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's literally what stealing is. He was my brother's." Trey's voice cracked on the last word. He hated that. Hated the weakness. "And he's all I got left." Nobody laughed after that. One of the other men, younger with a shaved head and a scar across his jaw, stepped closer. "Your brother's? What brother?" Trey's wallet was in his back pocket, a ratty thing held together with duct tape. His fingers fumbled with it, nearly dropping it twice before he pulled out the photograph. The edges were soft from handling, the crease down the middle threatening to split it in 2. He held it up. The bearded man took it, tilted it toward the light. His expression shifted. Surprise. Maybe something softer underneath. "Marco, you knew him?" The question came out desperate. "Kyle knew him," the scarred man said quietly. "Hey Kyle, get out here." Another figure emerged from the garage, this one older, maybe mid-50s. Lean and weathered, with gray threading through his dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. He took the photo without a word, studied it for a long moment. When Kyle looked up at Trey, something passed between them. A recognition that went deeper than features, though those were there too. The same sharp jawline, the same way of standing like the world might knock you down but you'd get back up anyway. "Marco's little brother," Kyle said. It wasn't a question. Trey nodded. "Where've you been, kid? Marco talked about you all the time. But after Kyle's jaw tightened. "After Syria, we tried to find you. Social services said you'd been placed." "Placed?" Trey's laugh was bitter. "Yeah, 3 times. Then a group home. Then a shelter when I aged out of the program early." He gestured at Jimmy, who was pressing against the kennel door now, whining. "Marco left him with Danny, right? But Danny moved to Portland last year, and nobody wanted to keep a 70-pound pit bull. I heard he was here." The men exchanged glances. The bearded one, he had to be the club president based on the patch on his vest, rubbed his face. "Kid walked across 2 neighborhoods at midnight with dog food and a shoelace leash," he muttered. "That's either stupid or dedicated." "Both," Trey said. Kyle almost smiled. Almost. He handed the photo back, but his eyes never left Trey's face. "You want him back? He's yours. But here's the deal, dogs need structure. Consistency. You show up here every day. 7 sharp. You walk him, feed him, train him properly. And while you're at it, you learn something." "Learn what?" "Whatever we teach you." Kyle crossed his arms. Your brother was good people. Best mechanic we ever had, and he hadn't even finished his training. You've got his blood. Let's see if you've got his work ethic. Trey looked at Jimmy, then at the men surrounding him. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd expected fists, maybe cops, definitely getting kicked out. Not this. 7 a.m., he repeated. Every day. Okay. Kyle reached past him and opened the kennel. Jimmy bounded out, nearly knocking Trey over. 70 pounds of muscle and relief and recognition. The dog's tongue found Trey's face, his hands, anywhere he could reach. Trey buried his fingers in Jimmy's fur and felt something in him give way. Tomorrow morning, Kyle said. Don't be late. Trey nodded, unable to speak around the tightness in his throat. He clipped the makeshift leash to Jimmy's collar. Someone had at least kept that, and started toward the gate. Hey kid, the president called. What's your name? Trey. Trey. Welcome to the Reapers. The alarm on Trey's borrowed phone went off at 5:30. He was already awake. Jimmy lifted his head from the foot of the air mattress. The shelter supervisor had made an exception for the dog after Trey showed her the club's handwritten note. Temporary arrangement, she'd said. Like she didn't believe it would last. Trey believed it. He had to. The walk to the lot took 40 minutes on foot. Trey left at 6:15. Jimmy trotting beside him on the real leash Kyle had given him the night before. Thick nylon with a carabiner clip. Professional. The kind that said someone gave a damn. The gate was already open when they arrived. Kyle stood near the garage entrance, coffee mug in hand, checking his watch. 6:58, he said. Good. Trey didn't mention he'd been standing at the corner for 3 minutes. Waiting. Didn't want to seem too eager. Kyle handed him a push broom. Garage bay 2. Sweep it clean. Oil dry goes in the red bin, metal scraps in the blue. Jimmy's bowls are by the sink. Fill the water, half a cup of kibble. We'll work on portions later. No good morning. No small talk. Just expectations. Trey got to work. Chrome and grease filled every corner of the garage. Motorcycles in various states of undress lined the bays. Some stripped to frames, others gleaming and whole. The smell hit him immediately, motor oil, leather, welding smoke. The kind of smell that clung to clothes and meant you'd built something that day. Sweeping should have been simple, but the oil stains were stubborn and the metal shavings hid in cracks. Trey's arms ached by the time he finished bay 2. Kyle appeared, ran a finger along the workbench, inspected it. Again, you missed the corners. No anger in his voice, just fact. Trey swept again. By 8:30, bay 2 was genuinely clean. Kyle nodded, pointed at a disassembled carburetor spread across a work mat. Parts washers in the back. Clean these. Don't lose anything. The work was meditative. Each piece slid through the solvent, years of carbon and gunk dissolving under Trey's careful scrubbing. He laid them out in order the way Marco used to arrange his tools. Smallest to largest. Logical. You've done this before. Alex appeared beside him. A mountain of a man with forearms like tree trunks and eyes that missed nothing. His voice was gravel and cigarettes. My brother showed me. Little stuff. Lawn mowers, mostly. Lawn mowers. Alex snorted. Well, carburetors are just fancy lawn mower parts. You're doing it right. Keep going. The other members drifted through as the morning stretched into afternoon. They didn't ignore him, but they didn't coddle him either. Someone left a sandwich on the workbench, turkey and cheese. No note. Another pointed at the water station when Trey looked parched. Small gestures that said, You're here, we see you. Keep working. Jimmy spent the morning exploring, then claimed a spot in the corner where he could watch Trey work. The dog's presence was a tether, a reminder of why any of this mattered. Around 2, Alex rolled an old minibike out from behind a storage container. The thing was a disaster. Rusted frame, no seat, engine caked in grime. Found this in an estate sale, Alex said. Figured it's garbage. Unless someone wants to prove me wrong. He left it there, 10 feet from Trey's workstation. A challenge without words. Trey lasted maybe 5 minutes before he walked over. The frame was solid under the rust. The engine was seized, but not cracked. With work, a lot of work, it could live again. Thinking about it? Kyle had materialized behind him, without a sound. Maybe. Tools are in the red cabinet. You break something, you replace it. You need help, you ask. But the work, that's yours. Trey ran his hand over the frame. Okay. The next week blurred into routine. 7 a.m. Every morning, rain or shine. Even when his legs screamed from the walk. Even when the shelter supervisor gave him grief about missing breakfast. He swept, cleaned, learned. The mini bike became his project between tasks. Minutes here and there. Where he'd disassemble another piece, soak it, study it. Alex started leaving schematics on the workbench. No explanation, just diagrams with parts labeled in careful handwriting. Trey devoured them. Kyle enrolled him in the alternative school 2 weeks in. The program had a welding track, a partnership with a local trade union. Trey's hands were already steady from his work at the garage. The instructor noticed. "You've got good habits," he said. "Someone teach you?" "I'm learning," Trey answered. By week 3, Jimmy had stopped sleeping in the corner. He'd migrated to the couch in the clubhouse lounge, and on Friday nights when Trey stayed late, the dog would curl against him, massive head in his lap. The first time it happened, Trey's hand stilled in Jimmy's fur. "He remembers you," Kyle said from the doorway. "Dogs don't forget their people." "I thought he'd forgotten. It's been over a year. Bonds like that stick." Kyle sat down, handed Trey a soda from the fridge. "Your brother used to say that. About the club, about Jimmy, about you. Said you were tougher than you looked." Trey couldn't look at him. "I don't feel tough. Tough isn't about feeling. It's about showing up when it'd be easier not to." The minibike's engine turned over for the first time on a Thursday morning. Trey had just finished reinstalling the carburetor, the one he'd cleaned his first day. The sputter, cough, then roar made everyone in the garage stop and look. Alex walked over, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He circled the bike once, twice. "Not bad," he finally said. "Needs a seat, paint, real handlebars. But the heart's beating." Trey couldn't stop grinning. "Don't get cocky," Alex added. "You're not riding it yet. You're 13. And this thing needs work before it's road safe." But there was something in his voice. Pride, maybe. That afternoon, Kyle dropped a small patch on Trey's workbench. Custom embroidered. Colors bright. "Legacy in progress." "For your backpack," Kyle said. "When you're ready." Trey picked it up, turned it over in his hands. A different kind of patch. Something his own. "Thank you," he managed. Kyle just nodded. 7 a.m. tomorrow, kid. "I'll be here." The woman arrived on a Tuesday mid-morning, clipboard in hand and doubt written across her face. Trey was elbow-deep in transmission fluid when Kyle's voice cut through the garage. "Trey, office, now." The tone said everything. Jimmy sensed it too, rising from his spot and following close. Ms. Patricia Hendricks from Child Protective Services sat in the cramped office, her blazer too crisp for the surroundings. She looked at Trey the way people look at paperwork. The grease under his nails, the welding burn on his forearm. Jimmy pressed against his leg. "Trey, I'm here because your shelter supervisor filed a report. You've been leaving early every morning, sometimes not returning until evening. She's concerned about your whereabouts and the people you're associating with." Her eyes flicked to Kyle, then to the club photos on the wall. "A motorcycle club is not an appropriate environment for a minor." "I'm learning a trade," Trey said quietly. "I'm enrolled in school. You're 13 years old with no legal guardian, spending unsupervised time with adult men in an environment that," she glanced at her notes, "serves alcohol and has members with criminal records." Kyle said nothing. "We want what's best for you, Trey. There's a group home in the Northern District with structure, supervision, counseling services." "No." The word came out harder than Trey intended. "I'm not going back into the system. It's not your decision to make." "Then whose is it?" Trey's voice cracked. "Nobody asked what I wanted when they shuffled me around 3 times. Nobody asked if I wanted to lose my brother's dog because foster families don't take pets. You're talking about what's best for me like you know anything about my life. Ms. Hendricks' expression softened slightly, but her pen kept moving across the paperwork. I understand you're grieving, but grief doesn't make this situation appropriate. Kyle finally spoke. What would make it appropriate? Excuse me, you're concerned about structure. The kid shows up here at 7 every morning. Hasn't missed a day in 6 weeks. He's learning mechanics, welding, responsibility. He's in school, an accredited program, by the way. So what's actually inappropriate here? The leather vests. Mr. Brennan, I'm sure you mean well, but I served with his brother. Army, 2 tours. Marco was killed in action, and this boy has been invisible to the system ever since. We're not trying to replace his family. We're trying to be what's left of it. Ms. Hendricks closed her folder. I'll need to schedule a formal review. A judge will make the final determination. Until then, Trey remains in temporary shelter placement. She stood, handed Kyle a business card. The hearing is in 2 weeks. If you're serious about guardianship, you'll need documentation, references, background checks, home stability assessment. After she left, Kyle sat heavily in the desk chair. This is going to get messy. I won't go, Trey said. I'll run before I let them. You'll do nothing stupid. Kyle's voice was steel. We fight this the right way. Legal. Buy the book. He pulled out his phone, started scrolling. I've got Marco's service records. Photos of your progress here. The school can provide attendance records. Alex appeared in the doorway. Heard the suit. What do you need? Character witnesses. Clean records if you've got them. Anyone willing to stand in a courtroom. I'm in, Alex said immediately. The others echoed agreement from the garage. The next 2 weeks blurred. Kyle worked like his life depended on it. Gathering documents, making calls, meeting with lawyers he couldn't really afford. The club took up a collection for legal fees. Even the guys with records offered what they could. Timesheets showing Trey's work hours, testimony about his character, proof of the structure Ms. Hendricks claimed he lacked. Trey kept showing up at 7, kept working. It was the only thing that felt real. The courtroom was smaller than he'd expected. Ms. Hendricks sat with another caseworker. Kyle had brought a lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Rita who specialized in veteran family cases. Behind them, the gallery filled with club members. A dozen men in leather vests, sitting quiet and respectful, but present. Undeniably present. The judge was a black woman in her 50s with reading glasses and an expression that gave nothing away. She reviewed the files in silence. Ms. Hendricks, you've recommended placement in a supervised group home. Mr. Brennan, you're requesting consideration as a guardian contact with the minor remaining in your care. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. Trey. The judge looked directly at him. This is your life we're discussing. Where do you want to be? Trey stood. His voice came out steadier than he felt. With my dog. With people who knew my brother. With family. The court appreciates sentiment, but I need to consider your safety and development. I'm developing. Trey pulled the folded paper from his pocket. His latest welding test score. High 90s. I couldn't do that in a group home. I couldn't learn a trade or have Jimmy or know that someone actually cares if I show up. The judge studied the paper, then looked at Kyle. You understand the responsibility you're taking on? A grieving teenager isn't a hobby. No, Your Honor. He's family. She reviewed the documents again. Nobody moved. I'm granting temporary guardianship to Mr. Brennan with court supervision. Trey will remain in his care for 6 months with mandatory check-ins, continued school enrollment, and compliance with all conditions. She looked at Trey. This is a chance, young man. Don't waste it. Trey couldn't speak. Outside the courthouse, the club surrounded them. Backslaps for Kyle, quiet nods for Trey. Jimmy, who'd waited in Kyle's truck, nearly knocked Trey over when he opened the door. You heard that, boy? Trey buried his face in the dog's fur. We're staying. Kyle's hand landed on his shoulder. 7 a.m. tomorrow, kid. We've got work to do. Tomorrow felt real again. Summer turned Phoenix into an oven, and the garage became an oven by noon. Trey didn't care. He'd moved into Kyle's spare room 3 weeks after the hearing. A small space with a bed, a desk, and a window that overlooked the alley. Jimmy claimed half the bed the first night and never gave it back. The minibike sat in Kyle's carport now, nearly finished. Trey had sanded the frame down to bare metal, primed it, and painted it a deep blue that reminded him of Marco's old Chevy. The seat was salvaged leather, stitched by hand with Alex's guidance. New handlebars, new grips, new life. "She's beautiful," Alex said one morning, running his hand along the tank. "Your brother would have been proud." Trey tightened the last bolt on the footpeg. "Think it'll actually run? Only one way to find out." The engine caught on the second kick. That familiar roar, cleaner now, stronger. Trey couldn't stop grinning. "Not on the street," Kyle warned from the doorway. "You're still 13, but the lot's got plenty of space." Trey spent the next hour doing careful loops around the clubhouse parking area, Jimmy barking encouragement from the sidelines. The bike handled like a dream, responsive, eager, alive. Each turn felt like flying. By mid-July, Trey wasn't just working at the garage. He was teaching. A new prospect named Danny, no relation to the old Danny, had joined the club, young and eager but clueless about basic maintenance. Trey found himself explaining carburetor function, demonstrating proper torque techniques, correcting grip positions with the same patience Kyle and Alex had shown him. "When'd you become the expert?" Danny asked, genuinely impressed. "I'm not. I just remember what they taught me." But he was, in a way. 6 months had changed him. His hands knew what to do now. The club noticed. Conversations that used to happen around him now included him. They asked his opinion on builds, let him troubleshoot problems, trusted his hands with their machines. The kid who'd snuck through the gate with dog food and desperation had become someone they relied on. On a Saturday in August, Kyle called a meeting. The full club gathered, the full club, all present. Trey stood awkwardly near the back until Kyle waved him forward. "Most of you know Trey's story. Some of you served with his brother. All of you have watched him show up, work hard, and earn his place here." Kyle pulled a wooden box from behind the bar, old, refinished with brass corners. "Marco left this in storage before his last deployment. Asked me to hold on to it. Said he'd know when the time was right." He handed the box to Trey. The wood felt warm in his hands. Inside, nestled in foam, were tools, Marco's tools. Each one showed use, care, the patina of a working man's life. But it was the envelope taped inside the lid that made Trey's breath catch. The handwriting was unmistakably Marco's, blocky, practical. "If you're reading this, it means I trusted someone enough to pass this on. Little brother, I don't know where you'll be when you get this, but I know who you'll be. You're tougher than you think. Smarter than anyone gives you credit for. Don't let the world tell you what you're worth. Build something that matters. Build a life that's yours. These tools helped me figure out who I was. Maybe they'll help you too. Love you, kid." Always did. He couldn't see the words anymore. Trey couldn't stop the tears even if he'd wanted to. Jimmy pushed against his leg, solid and present. Kyle's hand landed on his shoulder. Not pity, just witness. "Your brother was right about you," Kyle said quietly. "You've built something here. Something that matters." The club didn't look away. They didn't tell him to toughen up or swallow it down. They just stood there, watching him break and watching him heal. Alex stepped forward with something in his hands. A patch, larger than the one Trey wore on his backpack. The words were different this time. Legacy in Progress was still there. But above it, in smaller script, Marco's brother, Iron Reaper family. "You're too young for a full patch," Alex said. "But this says you're ours. Says you belong." Trey couldn't find words. He just held the patch tight. That evening, after the others had filtered out, Trey sat on the clubhouse steps with Jimmy. The minibike was parked nearby, the toolbox rested beside him, and the patch was already sewn onto his jacket. Kyle brought out 2 sodas, sat down without asking. "You good?" "Yeah." Trey meant it. "I was thinking about what Marco wrote, about building something that matters. You already are. I want to keep going. Finish high school, maybe go to trade school. Become a real mechanic. The kind Marco was. The kind Marco was, Cal said carefully, was the kind who showed up for people, who didn't give up when things got hard. You're already that kind, Trey. The mechanical skills are just details. Kyle looked away. He wrote me letters from Syria, always asked about you, wanted to make sure someone would look out for you if something happened. He cleared his throat. Guess he knew. They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dropped toward the horizon, turning the desert sky orange and gold. Jimmy dozed between them, content. The dog's breathing was steady, deep. Trey realized Jimmy hadn't had nightmares in weeks. Neither had he. Somewhere in the distance, engines roared, club members heading out for an evening ride. The sound was familiar now, comforting. 7 a.m. tomorrow? Trey asked. Cal smiled. You even have to ask? Trey looked at the patch on his jacket, at the dog by his side, at the man who'd chosen to be family when nobody else would. He'd come here trying to steal back a piece of his past. Instead, he'd found 30 people willing to build his future. And that mini bike in the carport? It was just the beginning. Trey walked into that clubhouse trying to steal back a piece of his past. Instead, he found 30 people willing to build his future. What would you have done in Trey's situation? Drop your thoughts below. And if this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories about the unexpected bonds that change lives. See you in our next video.